Captain Ethan Reynolds crouched behind the charred remains of an abandoned vehicle, his breathing shallow, his pulse steady. The moonlight filtered through a jagged hole in the shattered roof above, illuminating the desolation that was once a thriving city. Now, it was a graveyard of twisted steel and ash, patrolled by the invincible invaders who had brought humanity to its knees. Ethan adjusted his visor, scanning the empty streets for signs of movement. A faint hum vibrated the air, a telltale sign of alien patrol drones sweeping the area. He raised a gloved hand, signaling the team to hold. Behind him, shadows moved silently into position, each member taking cover with practiced precision. Connor Blake was the first to break radio silence, his voice a whisper in Ethan's earpiece. "We're clear for now, Cap, but those drones are looping back faster than the last time. They're learning. They're machines," Ethan murmured. "It's what they do." Connor didn't reply, but Ethan could imagine the smirk tugging at the tech genius's lips. Connor was the team's youngest member, a wiry man with sharp features and sharper wit. Beneath the sarcasm, he carried the weight of having lost his family in the invasion, a pain that often surfaced in his eyes during quiet moments. The faintest crunch of rubble drew Ethan's attention to Dante Morgan, who had shifted to better cover their flank. Dante's massive frame made him an imposing figure, but he moved with the agility of a predator. His face, half hidden beneath a scarred helmet, was grim as always. Dante rarely spoke of his past, but his actions spoke volumes. He was a man with nothing left to lose, driven by a fire that burned brighter with each passing day. Ethan's earpiece crackled again, this time with the measured tone of Lucas Carter. Snipers nest secured. No movement to the west. Awaiting orders. "Stay sharp," Ethan replied. "We don't know what's waiting for us." He glanced at Jordan Hayes, the team's medic, who was crouched beside him, adjusting the straps on his pack. Jordan's hands moved with the practiced ease of someone who had saved more lives than he cared to count, but his eyes betrayed a lingering hope, a rare and fragile thing in this world. Jordan's optimism was a quiet anchor for the team, a reminder that humanity was more than just its struggle for survival. The plan was simple, at least on paper. Infiltrate the alien command center, plant the charges, and get out before the fireworks began. Simple never meant easy, especially not with the Zilithians. These extraterrestrial overlords had arrived 2 years earlier, their advanced technology overwhelming Earth's defenses in weeks. Resistance had been sporadic, desperate, and largely futile, until now. Ethan's team was humanity's last hope. The stakes were clear. If they failed, the Zilithians' newest weapon would erase the last vestiges of human resistance. Failure wasn't an option. The hum of the patrol drones grew louder, closer. Ethan tensed, motioning for silence. He held his breath as twin beams of blue light swept over their position. The drones paused, scanning, and Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger of his suppressed rifle. The slightest misstep, the faintest sound, would mean certain death. The lights passed. The drones continued their patrol, their hum fading into the distance. Ethan exhaled, and so did the team. He signaled for them to move. They slipped through the ruins like shadows, navigating the labyrinth of debris and collapsed buildings. Each step was calculated, every movement deliberate. The alien command center loomed in the distance, a spire of obsidian metal that pierced the sky, its surface pulsing with an eerie blue glow. It was both a monument to the Zilithians' dominance and a stark reminder of humanity's fragility. Connor's voice broke the tense silence. "You ever wonder why they bother keeping us alive? I mean, if they want us gone, they could have done it already." "Don't overthink it," Dante growled. "Focus on the mission." Jordan chimed in, his voice soft but firm. "Maybe they see us as more than just pests. Maybe there's something they fear." "Doubt it," Lucas interjected over the comms. "Fear's a human thing. These bastards are pure logic." "Enough chatter," Ethan said. Eyes on the objective, they reached the perimeter of the command center without incident. But Ethan knew better than to believe their luck would hold. He scanned the area, noting the automated turrets that tracked the perimeter with mechanical precision. Beyond the gates, alien soldiers moved in rigid formations, their insectoid bodies glinting under the harsh lights. Ethan turned to Connor. "You're up." Connor nodded, pulling a small device from his pack. He worked quickly, his fingers flying over the holographic interface. "Give me 30 seconds. Just keep them off me." The team formed a protective ring around Connor, weapons at the ready. Time seemed to stretch as the seconds ticked by. Ethan's mind raced with contingency plans, each one grimmer than the last. This mission was a gamble, and he knew the odds were stacked against them. "Got it," Connor whispered. The gates hissed open, and the team slipped inside. The interior of the command center was a stark contrast to the desolation outside. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and the air was thick with the hum of alien machinery. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. They were deep in enemy territory now, with no margin for error. They moved swiftly, guided by Connor's scanner. The map was incomplete, but it was better than nothing. They descended deeper into the structure, the tension mounting with every step. At last, they reached their target, a massive chamber housing the alien weapon. It was a monolithic construct, its core a swirling vortex of blue energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Ethan's stomach tightened. This was it. "Plant the charges," he ordered. "We've got 10 minutes. Tops." The team moved with practiced efficiency, setting the explosives around the weapon's power conduits. Ethan kept watch, his eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but there was no time to second-guess. As the last charge was secured, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber. Ethan raised his fist, signaling for silence. The team froze, weapons trained on the entrance. The first alien soldier stepped into view, its elongated head tilting as it surveyed the room. Ethan fired, the shot piercing the creature's skull. Chaos erupted as more soldiers poured into the chamber, their weapons blazing. "Fall back!" Ethan shouted, his voice cutting through the cacophony. "Protect the charges." The team fought with everything they had, their movements synchronized and deadly. Lucas picked off targets with surgical precision, while Dante's heavy rifle tore through the alien ranks. Connor and Jordan provided covering fire, their expressions grim but determined. Ethan's heart pounded as he covered their retreat, his rifle barking in sharp bursts. He knew they couldn't hold out forever, but they didn't need to. They just needed to buy enough time. As the aliens closed in, the charges began to beep, their timers counting down. Ethan's voice was calm, but his words carried the weight of finality. "We're not dying here. Move!" They burst out of the chamber, the explosion rocking the structure behind them. Ethan didn't look back. There was no time for triumph, no moment to savor their success. The mission wasn't over, not yet. The stolen alien transport ship hummed with a faint, unfamiliar vibration, its controls a blend of organic curves and crystalline panels. Connor Blake sat hunched over the cockpit console, his fingers flying over the alien interface. The faint glow of his holographic tools lit up his face, accentuating the deep lines of concentration that rarely appeared beneath his usual smirk. "Whatever you're doing, Connor, do it faster," Ethan Reynolds said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. He stood near the cockpit, gripping a handhold as the ship jolted through another patch of turbulence. His eyes scanned the displays, deciphering the alien symbols with practiced precision. "I'm already breaking physics here, Cap," Connor replied. "Give me a minute. Or, I don't know, 10 seconds before we're vaporized by that warship breathing down our necks." Through the viewport, the massive alien warship loomed in pursuit, its sleek, obsidian hull glowing with pulses of blue energy. It dwarfed their stolen craft, which had been designed for troop transport rather than speed. The warship's weapon systems charged, a distant rumble resonating through the hull as its energy beams swept closer. In the back of the ship, Dante Morgan checked his rifle for the third time, a habitual motion that betrayed none of the apprehension gnawing at him. "This is what we get for stealing their toys," he muttered. "We should have just walked." "Be sure to bring that up in the afterlife," Lucas Carter said, his voice dry as he peered through the narrow porthole. He adjusted the scope on his sniper rifle, as though preparing to take a shot at a target miles out of reach. Jordan Hayes sat cross-legged beside a stack of alien crates, his medkit open and ready. He glanced at Ethan, his face a mask of calm. "We'll make it," he said quietly, as if willing the words to become reality. Ethan didn't respond. His focus was on the trajectory ahead, a debris field of wrecked satellites and orbital platforms drifting in the planet's upper atmosphere. It was a chaotic graveyard of humanity's past defenses. Useless now, but perhaps their only chance of survival. "Connor," Ethan said, his tone sharpening. "Got it." Connor's voice was triumphant, though tinged with exhaustion. "Hold on to something." The transport ship banked hard, diving into the debris field. The interior tilted violently, and the team grabbed whatever handholds they could find. Alien drones burst from the warship, their sleek forms weaving effortlessly through the wreckage, their glowing weapons primed. Ethan barked orders. Dante, suppressing fire. Lucas, cover our flank. The ship shuddered as Dante's heavy weapon roared to life, its rounds tearing into the pursuing drones. Lucas fired with precision, each shot finding its mark as the drones exploded in bursts of blue fire. Connor pushed the ship harder, weaving through the jagged remains of Earth's orbital infrastructure. "Don't scratch the paint," Connor quipped, his voice strained but still carrying a trace of humor. A sudden impact rocked the ship, throwing Jordan against the wall. Sparks flew from the control panels as an alarm blared. "We've lost shielding," Connor shouted. "One more hit like that, and we're toast." "Just keep flying," Ethan ordered. He moved to Jordan, helping him back to his feet. "You good?" Jordan nodded, brushing off the concern. "I've had worse. Let's finish this." The debris field thinned, and the alien warship slowed its pursuit, unwilling to risk damage to its superior systems. Ethan felt a flicker of relief as their stolen transport emerged into clear airspace, the command center's spire now visible on the horizon. The respite was short-lived. "Landing zone's hot," Connor said, his tone grim. "Aliens everywhere." "Standard protocol," Ethan replied. "We stick to the plan. Get us as close as you can." The transport descended into a barren wasteland littered with rubble and ash. The team disembarked quickly, weapons drawn, their movements precise and synchronized. The command center loomed ahead, its walls shimmering with an energy shield that rippled like liquid light. Ethan led them toward a rocky outcrop, using it for cover as they assessed the situation. Alien patrols moved in disciplined formations, their insectoid bodies glinting under the artificial glow of the structure. Automated turrets swept the perimeter, their barrels glowing faintly with a menacing blue hue. Connor crouched beside Ethan, his scanner emitting a faint hum. "Shield's got a triple-layer defense. I can override it, but it'll take time." "We'll cover you," Ethan said. He glanced at the others. "Dante, Lucas, you're on Overwatch. Jordan, stay close to Connor." The team moved into position, their actions smooth and deliberate. As Connor worked, the faint click of his tools seemed deafening against the silence. Ethan's eyes never left the patrols, his mind running through countless contingencies. A sudden discovery froze the group. Ethan spotted a fenced area to their right, its interior glowing with an unsettling light. Behind the fence were humans, men, women, and children, huddled together, their faces pale and gaunt. Alien sentries stalked between them, their cruel appendages glinting with metallic edges. "They're running experiments," Jordan whispered, horror etched into his face. Ethan felt the weight of the sight settle on his chest. "We can't do anything for them now. The mission comes first." "We're not just leaving them," Jordan protested, his voice rising slightly. "We are," Ethan said firmly, though the decision cut deeper than he let on. We fail here, and more than just these people die. The words hung heavy, but the team pressed on. Connor finished his work, and the shield flickered, a narrow gap appearing near the base of the structure. Ethan signaled the team, and they moved swiftly, slipping through the opening and into the heart of enemy territory. Inside, the air was thick with the hum of alien machinery. The walls pulsated with an organic rhythm, as though the structure itself were alive. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. The further they ventured, the more the atmosphere pressed down on them, an oppressive reminder of the enemy's dominance. Connor's scanner pinged softly. Found it. Weapon cores 3 levels down. Let's move, Ethan said. The path ahead was a winding maze of corridors, each one more labyrinthine than the last. Alien glyphs adorned the walls, their meaning incomprehensible but unsettling. Every step felt like an intrusion, every sound amplified in the eerie silence. Then, without warning, the corridor ahead lit up with a harsh blue glow. Ethan raised his fist, signaling for the team to stop. From the shadows emerged a squad of alien soldiers, their weapons trained and ready. The firefight erupted instantly, a cacophony of gunfire and alien screeches echoing through the corridor. Lucas took out the lead soldier with a single shot, while Dante's heavy rounds shredded the others. The aliens returned fire, their weapons emitting beams of searing energy that scorched the walls. Connor ducked behind cover, his voice strained. "We can't hold this position for long. Keep pushing forward," Ethan shouted, his rifle spitting fire as he advanced. The team moved as one, their training and discipline turning the chaotic battle into a deadly dance. The last alien fell, its body collapsing in a heap. The corridor was silent again, save for the labored breathing of the team. Ethan checked the timer on his wrist. They were running out of time. It was as if the room pulsed with the heartbeat of the invaders' dominance, a stark reminder of how fragile humanity's resistance had become. Ethan Reynolds scanned the room quickly, cataloging threats. Automated turrets hung from the walls, their glowing barrels sweeping in slow, deliberate arcs. At least a dozen alien soldiers patrolled the chamber, their insectoid forms unnervingly fluid in their movements. At the far end, elevated on a dais, was a control console, a shimmering pedestal that seemed to breathe with the same rhythm as the weapon itself. Connor whispered, his voice tight. "That console's our way in. Give me 2 minutes, and I can shut this thing down. But we'll need to clear those guards first." 2 minutes is a long time in a firefight, Lucas muttered, his sniper rifle already trained on the nearest patrol. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "We'll buy you the time." The team moved into position, each man syncing his movements with the others. Years of training had made their coordination almost second nature. Ethan gave the signal, and the room erupted into chaos. Dante opened fire first, his heavy rifle barking out a volley of rounds that tore through the nearest patrol. Lucas's shots followed, precise and deadly, each one finding its mark with surgical efficiency. The aliens responded immediately, their screeches echoing through the chamber as they returned fire with beams of searing energy. "Turrets are alive," Jordan shouted, diving behind a fallen piece of machinery as a glowing beam scorched the floor where he'd been standing moments before. "I see them," Ethan barked. He fired a burst at the nearest turret, his round sparking uselessly against its energy shield. "Connor, we need those defenses down." Connor was already at the console, his hands flying over the alien interface. "Working on it. Hold them off." The team moved as a unit, their positions shifting to compensate for the escalating threat. Dante drew the bulk of the aliens' attention, his sheer firepower keeping them pinned down, while Lucas picked off targets from the shadows. Ethan moved with precision, directing fire and covering weak points in their defense. Jordan stayed close to Connor, his medkit ready but his rifle steady, his shots keeping any stray enemies from reaching their tech specialist. The turrets continued their relentless assault, their beams carving deep gouges into the floor and walls. Ethan clenched his jaw as one of the beams narrowly missed him, the heat scorching his exposed neck. "Connor, status?" "Almost there," Connor growled, sweat dripping from his temple. "This interface is a nightmare. It's like it's fighting me." "Focus," Ethan said, his voice sharp but steady. He fired another burst, taking down an alien that had broken from cover. "You've got this." A sudden movement caught Ethan's eye. One of the aliens, larger and more heavily armored than the others, emerged from a side corridor. Its weapon glowed with an ominous intensity, and it moved with deliberate purpose, its gaze locking onto Connor. "Priority target," Ethan shouted, drawing the team's attention to the newcomer. Lucas adjusted his aim, his voice calm. "I've got it," he fired, but the round ricocheted off the alien's armor, leaving only a shallow dent. "It's shielded." Lucas snapped. Ethan's mind raced. They needed a coordinated strike, and they needed it now. "Dante, suppressive fire." "Lucas, aim for the joints." "Jordan, back him up." The team shifted seamlessly into action. Dante unleashed a barrage of rounds, forcing the alien to raise its shield. Lucas fired methodically, targeting the creature's exposed joints. Jordan added his fire to the assault, his shots precise and deliberate. The alien staggered but didn't fall, its shield flaring with each impact. Connor's voice broke through the chaos. "Turrets are down!" The room seemed to shift as the automated defenses powered down, their glowing barrels dimming. Ethan seized the moment. "Push forward. Take it out." With the turrets no longer a threat, the team focused their fire on the armored alien. Dante's heavy rounds finally found purchase, punching through the creature's chest plate. It let out a guttural screech before collapsing, its weapon clattering to the floor. Ethan didn't allow himself a moment of relief. "Connor, the charges." "Now." "Already on it," Connor replied, his voice tight. He began setting the explosives around the weapon's power conduits, each movement quick and precise. Ethan moved to cover him, his rifle trained on the room's entrances. He could feel the tension in the air, the sense that the battle was far from over. The weapon's core pulsed erratically, its tendrils of energy lashing out as if in defiance. "Lucas, Dante, secure the perimeter," Ethan ordered. "Jordan, status?" Jordan was already moving between the team, checking injuries and administering quick patches where needed. "We're holding together," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. Connor straightened, his face pale but determined. "Charges are set. Timer's running. We've got 5 minutes to clear out." The team began their retreat, moving swiftly but cautiously toward their escape route. Ethan brought up the rear, his eyes scanning for any sign of pursuit. As they reached the corridor leading out of the chamber, the walls trembled, a low rumble resonating through the structure. "They know," Ethan muttered. Ahead, the exit loomed, a jagged tear in the alien structure where the team had first entered. Beyond it lay the barren wasteland, the transport ship waiting just beyond the ridge. Freedom was tantalizingly close, but the tremor in the walls grew stronger, and a deep, guttural roar echoed through the structure. Ethan's stomach tightened. The aliens weren't done with them yet. "Move," he shouted, his voice cutting through the rising noise. The team broke into a sprint, their boots pounding against the floor as the building began to shake violently. Ethan glanced over his shoulder, catching sight of a new wave of alien soldiers pouring into the chamber they had just vacated. "Contact rear," he shouted. "Suppress and run." Dante and Lucas turned, their weapons roaring as they laid down covering fire. The aliens advanced relentlessly, their screeches filling the air, but the team's precision and firepower kept them at bay. Connor stumbled as the floor beneath him cracked, but Jordan was there in an instant, pulling him forward. "Keep moving," Jordan urged. The exit was just ahead. Ethan could feel the heat of the weapon core behind him, its unstable energy lashing out as the charges counted down. The sound of the aliens' pursuit was deafening, their fury palpable. Ethan reached the exit, turning to fire one last burst before leaping through the opening. The team followed, the roar of the impending explosion chasing them into the wasteland. Behind them, the alien structure erupted, a blinding light consuming the spire as the charges detonated. The ground shook violently, and a wave of heat washed over them. But Ethan didn't stop moving. The transport was in sight, its hatch open and waiting. The team piled in, Connor slamming the controls to power up the ship. The engines roared to life, and they lifted off just as the shockwave reached them, the force propelling them higher into the ash-filled sky. Ethan exhaled, his chest heaving. The mission wasn't over yet, but for the first time, he allowed himself to hope. Altitudes dropping. Connor shouted, his voice tight with strain. Ethan Reynolds gripped the edge of his seat, his jaw set with unyielding determination. We're not out yet. Keep it steady. Behind him, the rest of the team remained silent, their faces grim and taut. Dante Morgan was scanning the horizon through a viewport, his posture coiled like a spring. Lucas Carter was in the back, eyes flicking between the readouts, every muscle in his body tense. Jordan Hayes, always calm, had his hand on his sidearm, his fingers twitching slightly as if anticipating a threat. They had destroyed the alien weapon, disrupted the invaders' plans. But that victory was short-lived. As the explosion rocked the alien stronghold, a new threat had emerged, rising from the depths of the sky. A massive ship, larger than anything they'd encountered, had broken through the planet's atmosphere, a colossal warship that now loomed behind them, its sleek, obsidian surface gleaming with deadly purpose. That thing's not giving up, Lucas said flatly, his voice betraying his unease. We're not going to outrun it. Ethan's eyes narrowed. The alien ship had already launched a volley of energy beams, the blast narrowly missing their transport. Every strike made the ship shudder, throwing them off course. They couldn't keep dodging forever. Connor, we need a weapon, Ethan said, his voice low but urgent. Can you make this thing fight? Connor's lips twisted in frustration as he slammed his fist against the console. If I had a few more hours, maybe. But this ship isn't designed for combat. It's a transport. Dante turned, his hands clenched into fists. We don't have a few more hours. We're sitting ducks in here. Then we fight, Ethan said, his gaze unwavering. We do what we do best. The realization was swift. They had no choice. If they didn't stand their ground, the invaders would reach Earth and humanity's last hope would be lost. They had to fight, no matter the cost. Lucas, find us a spot to land, Ethan ordered, his voice cutting through the tension. Dante, you're with me. We're going to board that ship and take out their command center. Lucas nodded, his mind already calculating their best option. There's a plateau on the eastern ridge. It's rocky, but we'll have a chance to set up a defense. Then that's where we'll fight, Ethan said, rising from his seat. His eyes flicked over to the others, gauging their resolve. Are we ready? One by one, his team nodded. Dante's jaw was clenched, his mind already on the battle ahead. Lucas's face was hard, his sniper rifle a silent promise of death. Jordan, despite the weight of the situation, remained calm, his eyes focused. They were all ready. The ship veered toward the plateau, and as they began their descent, Ethan's mind raced through battle plans. Every move, every second would count. They didn't have much time before the alien warship descended upon them. This would be their final stand. As they touched down on the rocky surface, Ethan didn't hesitate. He was already out of his seat, moving swiftly toward the hatch. The team followed close behind, each one adjusting their gear, mentally preparing for the chaos ahead. The moment they stepped outside, the wind hit them, harsh and dry, carrying the scent of burning earth. The plateau was a barren wasteland. The ground cracked and scorched. The alien ship hovered above them like a predator, its shadow swallowing the landscape. Form up, Ethan barked. We hold the line here. Dante, Lucas, you're on Overwatch. Jordan, you're with me. The team took their positions, setting up a perimeter and preparing for the inevitable assault. The alien warship began its descent, massive engines thrumming ominously. Ethan could see the enemy soldiers already deploying, more than they had ever faced before. "This is it," Lucas said, his voice steady but tinged with the weight of what was to come. "We either win or die here." Ethan met his gaze, his face set. "We win." A silence descended, broken only by the low hum of the ship's engines and the distant clatter of alien boots on the rocky surface. Then, with a roar, the alien forces began their attack. The ground trembled as the first wave of soldiers charged, their weapons crackling with deadly energy. Dante opened fire first, his heavy rounds carving through the advancing alien ranks. Lucas picked off targets from a distance, his sniper rifle spitting death with clinical precision. The aliens were relentless, but their numbers were not enough to break the team's defense. Ethan and Jordan moved swiftly between positions, directing fire and covering their teammates. Their weapons tore through the alien soldiers, but the tide kept coming. The alien warship above them fired down, its weaponry lighting up the sky in bursts of blue fire, each blast sending shockwaves through the air. "They're pushing harder," Dante shouted, his voice thick with the strain of constant combat. Ethan gritted his teeth. "We need to make a move. We can't hold forever." The alien forces were beginning to overwhelm them. The numbers kept rising, and their advanced weaponry was too much for the team to handle in the long run. Ethan's eyes scanned the battlefield, his mind calculating. There was no way out, not unless they made a final, decisive strike. "Connor," Ethan called over the comms. "We need a shot at their power core. Can you find it?" Connor's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I'm on it. Give me a few more seconds." Ethan knew time was running out. He turned back to the battle, his voice rising above the noise. "Everyone, fall back. We're going in." The team hesitated for a moment before they followed his lead.